Hello, welcome back to Out on the Line podcast, and we have another review for you this week. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
That ought to tell you how I'm doing. I am ready to go on a magic carpet ride into eternity with the audience. Jeff, how are you doing this week?
I am doing fantastic, and we are going to be talking about Vince Staples in his new album, Crybaby. Now, Vince Staples, alumnus of the pod, somebody I think I don't know how deep you've gotten into Vince Staples, but he is one of my favorite artists in the hip hop genre. So I was really looking forward to this album when I heard it was announced. It's a drastic departure from kind of his normal sound. He is, I think, kind of flying this flag that I think a lot of artists are these days, of like, you don't have to stay in just the genre that has been picked out for you, right? I hear arguments like, where SZA is looked at as an R&B artist, but if you listen to her albums, like it's pop music. There's obviously R&B elements in a lot of it, but it's pop music. And I think just because of maybe the color of their skin, they're looked at and put into this little box, right? Now I don't know if anybody remembers Lil Wayne's foray into punk, like pop punk music and rock music, was terrible. He's better at speaking English than he is at playing guitar, and that's not saying much for either one these days. But Vince Staples, I think, is somebody that I had really no idea how varied his like musical influences and musical taste was. So when I heard this album was going to be different than like Ramona Park Broke My Heart, or Dark Times, the other albums that we've talked about on the podcast, I was very interested because I think he is at his heart just a great artist, and has chosen to use like hip hop and rap as kind of the paintbrush and canvas that he's chosen to use. But with this album, I think you don't lose who Vince Staples is, but it's a really interesting spin on a little something new for him.
Yeah, we got post-punk Vince Staples. And not just like, oh, for a song or two. Like there is a post-punk spine that runs through this whole thing, on top of like highly political content, which like isn't necessarily like completely new territory for him, but this amount of focus, I'm used to a lot more personal introspection from Vince Staples, and you get that here, but moreover, you get like a broader picture of the state of things in this country politically, and the state of things for Black Americans. And there's a lot of observation from an elevated view, as opposed to confession from within himself. But like you said, he doesn't lose that Vince Staples identity. It's the way that he says things. It's the musical sensibilities are still there, like whatever genre he's with. What's the song off Dark Times? Is it Lil Homies?
Lil Homies.
Lil Homies.
Probably my favorite Vince Staples song.
Life hard, but I go harder. Like that's phenomenal. That's a phenomenal hook. And you get a ton of hooks like that on here, those repetitive, driving, super duper catchy hooks on a song like Cotton. So yeah, politically charged pop punk or post-punk album from Vince Staples in 2026. Did not have that on my Out on That Line bingo card.
No, I didn't either. And speaking of excellent hooks, like Go Go Gorilla, I mean, you go basically the entire like TV Guide, Only in America. I mean, there's just so many good hooks in this. There's so many, when you like actually dig into the lyrics, like it's fun just to listen to on its own if all you're going to do is just pick a song here or there out. Like his rhymes are great, his cadence is great, but when you actually like go in and listen to the lyrics, and talking about, specifically in the song White Flag, one of my favorites on the album, talking about when the pigs see a young black man in traffic, why they treat me like I'm in a UFO. So he's also bringing in that like the alien element, like the illegal alien, like the immigration thing here. Cuff me in the back seat so I can't phone home. Again, playing up the like ET, but we know what he's actually talking about is being treated like a foreigner in a land that you live in and were born in and have been in your whole life. It's just very clever. I think that's one thing, is he's very funny. Like even if you listen to just interviews that he does, like he's a very, very funny, very clever person. And when he puts that into his music, it's, I don't know, something about like the tone of his voice is very soothing, but the way he writes his songs is like very biting. is razor sharp. And I think combining that with, I don't want to say lazy, but like that very easygoing way that he like goes through, like he never shouts really. He's not like DMX where it's like barks and all these ad libs and stuff like that. It's just really, it's like poetry. And the way he puts things together, I've always loved it. And with this album, I was a little worried because I remember other times that rap artists have tried to go into the rock world. Like sometimes it works great and sometimes it really doesn't. This was just excellent all the way through. And maybe it was, and I'd love to hear, maybe he's done an interview. Like I want to hear some of the post-punk bands that he likes. Like I want to see like where those influences come from.
Well, yeah, so would I, because again, that like eclecticism is what kind of makes him so special. And I'm getting that from basically 3 albums worth of material. I can't claim to be like, I always have to give that caveat. I'm not world's #1 Vince Staples expert. They're not going to put me in the documentary in 30 years. But I do know that much, that there's like a subtle eclecticism where like someone like Tyler, the Creator, is not afraid to go like bonkers and like more Therapin. Yeah, off the wall. And it's a little more like Vince Staples does it with a little more subtlety, and neither is wrong. It's just like different approaches to get to the same point, which is to like showcase that you're kind of fucking weird, man. Like if you watch the Vince Staples show on Netflix, you ever watch it?
Yes.
It's fantastic. I'm so bummed that they canceled it. It's just very like funny and surreal and weird and kind of bitter, and in the same way that he like doesn't back down from his views on an album like this, like at all. The show has like no sign of compromise or punches pulled either. It's like even when it kind of like makes him look bad. So he's a really, really, really interesting guy to have within the landscape of across all genres, where a lot of people are like braggadocio is the name of the game. Hype yourself up, however you're doing that. Sabrina Carpenter does it in a different way than Kendrick Lamar, but I think with Vince Staples, there's a tendency, again, especially on this album, towards this observation from the 500-foot view or whatever they say, I don't know, the satellite view of our political times and our social and cultural times in this country. And some of the songs are not afraid to get like, you look at a song like The Big Bad Wolf.
Mm-hmm.
Who drew that white man hanging on the cross? Don't put your right hand on the word of God. I'm getting paid now, so I keep a thing around and I shoot it fast like a minute in New York. Live by the gun, die at the hands of the law, because a badge and a gun make you more. And then the Slick Rick chorus, once upon a time, not long ago, rat-a-tat-tatted, and all the cops scattered. So it's like there's a lot of history packed into some of these songs. There's commentary packed into these songs, and it's just like very, very real, up to and including when the video came out for Blackberry Marmalade. There was like a horrendously graphic video of a mass shooting that went with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see it. I just read about it, and I was like, that is certainly a choice. Yeah, April 26th, it was released along with a graphic music video depicting a mass shooting. At the beginning of the video, a red hat bearing the album's title could be seen, as well as a date. And that's how people figured out they were getting an album. There is some, not for as much as I like praise Vince Staples for his subtlety, some not so subtle, and I would say totally welcome jabs up to and including the cover.
Mm-hmm.
The current administration, like Crybaby. It's a baby Trump in a fucking American flag diaper.
Yeah.
So I think I think I would be really curious to see what influences there were politically, like what kind of like artists did you incorporate from that kind of bent, from like political hip hop bent, and who were you influenced by in post punk? Be very interesting to know.
So I think, so what I've always loved is he's never shied away from any sort of talk about politics and things like that, but a lot of it was focused on really specifically like the Black experience in America. And obviously like most of this album is focused on the same thing, but I think he much more specifically got into like the current administration and not necessarily like the history of how this country has treated that population throughout the 250 years we've existed, and obviously prior to that too. So it's really interesting to hear him get so pointed, and it's not a, and it is a, like you said, kind of a like broad view. He's taking a look at these situations. I don't think there's a lot of mention of like very specific incidents that happened or anything like that, or at least not that many. A lot of it is focused on that experience, but it's through the lens of like right now, what's going on in the country at this time, and not necessarily like the history of what's brought us here. I think his ability to offer that perspective and do it like very intelligently, so that it's really inarguable, as far as when you see these things and when you hear these songs. I think he's very clever at, a song like Cotton. He's like, pick me up when I'm feeling down like cotton. And it's like, what that's referencing is the history of what that crop has meant to the Black population in this country, and using that now in relation to music. And that's that like wit that he has. That's that cleverness. He's like, I'm going to use this really awful thing to like kind of juxtapose with music, which makes me feel great, which was also a big part of, a lot of the music that we listen to was also created and kind of formed by Black people in this country. Rock music goes back to the blues, goes back to Robert Johnson, and then that's basically the first kind of like recorded versions of it. But where did he get it from? So obviously this stuff has been around for generations, for hundreds of years. And it feels like Vince Staples like appreciates that history, but is also not afraid to like make his own as well. And I think he is his previous albums, you could say, are just really straight up and down, just like hip hop and rap. And I would be interested if post-punk is the only thing he wants to use as like an outside influence to make his more kind of like rock rap sort of like elements like this album has. I'd be interested to see if maybe like new wave is something that was an influence on him, and what he might do to kind of bring that into his style. Or, and I think it's very interesting. It would be very interesting to hear, because obviously post-punk and rap are not the only things he's ever listened to. Like, what would he do with country music? Like clearly you would never think post-punk and rap would be things that would go together that well, right? There's obviously like Run DMC and Aerosmith did their thing, but that's a very blues-based version of rock and roll, and hip hop came from kind of the same thing. So while they may have been different branches, like they had the same trunk of that tree that they came from. Post-punk is a long step away from any sort of blues or anything like that. It might have been influenced by those things, but it's like you're talking about like 6 degrees of separation from where that music kind of originally came from. And to be able to make those things mesh together as well as he has is, one, I think points out how just good of an artist he is, and like how good of an ear he has for like what works and what doesn't. Because honestly, on this album, there were no skips. Like for me, like all the way through from song 1 to song 10, you get classic Vince Staples moments where it's like it feels like he leaves a lot of space. These are not like really overproduced songs, and he never really has done that sort of thing. It's like there's always some sort of, I guess, upbeat feeling element to it, especially on this album. I think knowing how, I guess, contrived like political albums can feel sometimes. Like think of all the songs, like what's that guy's name, Jesse Wells, that does he's basically trying to be like this generation's Woody Guthrie.
Couldn't even tell you. No idea.
And like the Oliver Anthony, when that song blew up, it's like it just feels very contrived sometimes when you do political songs. Like as much as I love Springsteen, like Streets of Minneapolis is not a great song. I obviously love the message, appreciate what he did for that and why he did it, but I don't love that. I don't love that song. And a lot of Springsteen's like extremely political things, especially late in career, have really kind of missed the mark. And it's not like he's just doesn't have his fastball anymore, because Letter to You was a fantastic album. So it's just like when you do that and you try so hard to write about a specific thing, it just can feel very forced. And I think that is what Vince Staples avoided on this, is any of these songs can stand as just a single. Like you don't have to dive into what he's saying and all that to enjoy them. But when you do, it just makes you enjoy them more.
And there's a real sense of urgency to it. I think that the post punk lends it, which makes it's a 35-minute album. It goes by super quick. And not that it has to, but that's the thing is when you say no skips, I got to the end and I was like, I would have spent more time with this.
Mhm.
You know, you could have thrown 2 more things on here. I would have been fine with it because there was a lot to sink your teeth into politically. Like you are confronted in these songs, something like Go Go Gorilla. You
Mhm.
listen to that as a white person, and you're like, oh my God, we're just like the worst people imaginable. Like, holy shit. And the fact that the chorus, I don't know if either of your nieces or your nephew ever got into this, but there's some YouTube channel where it'll be these people like, "Oh, we're running through the jungle. Dun 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 dun. Jump over the log. Watch out for the vulture." And they're like in front of a green screen, and it's just like doing stupid shit. It's to make kids exercise to like a 5-minute video. And there's one, it's called Gorilla Smash, and it does that go, go, gorilla, go, gorilla, gorilla smash. And you're supposed to have like thunder sticks that you bang
Yeah.
and stuff. I spent a lot of time with nieces and nephews at this point. I see all the weird crap they get into. But I think I think in large part that's kind of like cribbed in this. Like I can't say for sure that he knows that exists, but they're like a fairly popular thing. I wouldn't be surprised. And it adds this like childlike playground, like nursery rhyme thing, which is like it's an interesting implication, right? That like casual attitudes towards this kind of thing can start pretty young, depending on how you're raised and what kind of parents you have. And I think we're kind of like those chickens are coming home to roost. Our generation, I think, like a lot of people have been exposed in the last 10 years as to like what thoughts they were holding on to until they were safe to say out loud. And that's the context that Vince Staples is making this album in. So like there's like so many police critical tracks on here and political tracks, and it all is given the urgency that it's still like identifiably rap hip hop, but the post punk spine gives it an urgency. Like these
Mhm.
songs when they're coming weird like this, da underscore your point. Um, with just these like heavy guitars and heavy bass, these driving beats. He's not afraid to switch it up and do like 4 on the floor on a song. Um, but for the most part, it's these really strong punky currents that run through it that underscore the message. Like the fact that like pretty quickly something like Go Go Gorilla reaches out and you're like, whoa, what the fuck? Same thing with Cotton. Um, but the only in America, like these songs kind of reach out and shake you.
Mhm.
And they're not like, on either side, right? Where you have people that are like, I need to be political and stand up to the current administration, or people who are like, I need to stand up. Another white voice is required to stand up and stand behind the president. Like in either direction, it becomes an exercise in solipsism. They're just like, this is about me standing up and saying where I am. Like the Springsteen stuff, I'm with you where like Streets of Minneapolis was kind of lame. And it was kind of one of those like, we got to hear from Bruce in this moment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate what you're trying to do, but it wasn't particularly interesting. And then don't get me started on the right wing people. They can't make art to save their lives. So you get someone like Vince Staples, who's again just taking the issue and hitting you in the face with it and being like, what are we doing about this? How many dead black kids is too many? How many incidents like this is too many? Like, when do you start giving a shit and do something about it? And it's not like you're a piece of shit if you don't. And it's not like I'm so great for giving you this message. It's just, it's urgent political bulletins on like courtesy of Vince Staples. And I just think these songs, in addition to being super duper enjoyable, have great lyrics, have great messaging, very sobering. Like it's a pretty substantial listen and a substantial album. It's not just
Mhm.
like haha stuff. Like I listened to this band called Don't Stop or We'll Die, and it's just like the most ridiculous, crazy, stupid but fun music. To then listen to this album, I'm like, oh man, like what a hefty listen in comparison to a lot of what else is floating out there today. I really enjoyed this quite a bit. I think for me, it is an 8 out of 10.
For me it's a 9 out of 10. This was, I think, from start to finish. I can't, it's not perfect because there's a lot of songs I loved, but there's not, there wasn't enough that like just absolutely jumped out. And I think there are other Vince Staples songs that I have liked more than a lot of these. But I think the point was not to make little homies. You know what I mean? The point was not to make like dance music or make club music or or do that sort of thing with this album. I think there was a message to this, and I think message well received on this end. Just really, really incredible all the way through. It really reminded me a lot of like Public Enemy, and I think just the idea that there's no need to mince words about this stuff. I think it's exactly like you're saying, is like, how many times do these things need to happen before it's too much? And I think the answer is obvious, that there are not enough that can happen for the people that are in power to ever think it's enough. And as long as those people are in power, it's going to remain the same. And I think it's somewhat of a call to arms. I don't think he's saying, we need to rise up and overthrow everybody, although I'm sure he'd be on board with that if it happened. But I think it's just, he is using his place as an artist to point out the things that are wrong in our society right now and have been wrong for a long time. And I will always appreciate Vince Staples. I always have. And especially after this album, I will continue to do so.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah. The Public Enemy, and then like NWA, like the Big Bad Wolf is Fuck the Police, So yeah, just some really substantial songs on this. Yeah, you compare it to the rest of Vince Staples, and it's identifiably Vince Staples, but vastly different. Be curious how it went over with people that kind of love to dance with the date that brung you. But for me, this was like a really unexpected. Like, I listened to Blackberry Marmalade and I was like, oh, like as a single. And it got me excited. And then to just get a whole album that kind of lived up to the promise that song laid, where we were going to get something spicy, militantly political, and eminently enjoyable. Like you said, it's not perfect. There's a little bit of sameness in certain songs and beats and stuff like that. But the overall effect, it's highly enjoyable and has a lot of meat on the bone.
Yeah, 8 out of 10 and 9 out of 10. That is strong for Mr. Staples. So Alex, I know I had mentioned we had done, and now I know we did Dark Times. Did we do Ramona Park Broke My Heart?
Correct me if I'm wrong. And I guess a cursory look at youtube.com/c/out on that line might tell us, but isn't the Vince Staples episode the Lost episode? Wasn't it a double feature with Miss Lucy Dacus?
It very well could have been.
I think it might be the Lost episode. Excuse me to have a burn. I muted it. You're welcome, gang. I was going to sit in there like a rock, and I was going to I'm having heart attack symptoms. I'm coming to join you, Elizabeth, because I'm going to keel over and die if I don't get a taste of the sweet, sweet audio-visual podcast nectar at youtube.com/c/out on that line. Folks, you should go through and see if we did the Vince Staples episode. I can't remember if it's lost or not. The Lucy Dacus one is 100% lost. Pretty sure we did them on the same night as a double feature, as the kids like to say, a double feature Lamana, And
I think it was the Ramona Park Broke My Heart album is the lost one, because we do have Dark Times. We have a Dark Times episode up.
Okay. So that's good news, gang. You can see Dark Times. A great episode. I remember it very well. I knew the whole time that it was on the channel. Don't worry about it. I was just messing with you to make sure you were paying attention and make sure Jeff was paying attention. Gaslighting is not real. You're just crazy. So I guess that was the Ramona is part of the Lost episode. Huh? How about that? Well, you can try to find the Lost episode at youtube.com/c/out on that line. Let us know if you do find it. And while you're there, subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up so that you like the video, click the bell so that you get notifications when we make new videos, hype the video, share it with a friend, and leave a comment. Oh boy, do we love when you leave comments. Jeff and I got accused of being racist on our Eka Vandal episode. And I said, friend, I think you fundamentally misunderstood the point of the argument. And he went, don't mind me. I was probably high on a weed. And I said, you know what? Can't fault you for that level of honesty, I suppose. So come see what political doings are going down in the comments and our videos. We have so many treats for you and so many more to come at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
Folks, do what the man says. We'll see you next time.